Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Klickitat County regular meeting for October 15th.
Do we still have everybody muted? Okay. Want to double check. Hi, guys. Come on forward. Nobody can hear you back there.
I'll have to go through those takes. Surprise.
Hello.
Morning. Okay, so this is kind of comes out of the Clean Energy Property Tax Impacts Task Force. And Greg and Billy have been so gracious as to go to almost all, if not all, those meetings and provide a lot of great information. What we've come across, though, is during that process, as well as the legislative steering committee process, one of the points that we've talked about up here and we continue to bring up is the sales tax impacts on the renewable energy projects. And it's a lot of money that's being left on the table. And I've pushed, and I know Greg's pushed, Paul Jewell to say, hey, this would be a big game changer for us in terms of dollars and cents. A lot of people like to talk about the 1 to 3% more money per year when, that's only the difference between $50,000 and $150,000 of total revenue, where one of these projects by itself could be $3 million in sales tax revenue. And granted, it doesn't happen every year, but it would go a long ways into helping the county. And so we started having some on the side conversations because we weren't going to get through WASAC. And I believe Greg's had some conversation with some other treasurers. And so we just wanted to wrap the whole board around about direction going forward and make sure that we've got full board consent.
Yep. And basically, Billy and I sit on this task force to represent the treasurers. And I believe Billy sits on it to represent the assessors. So we're actually a very unique county that we actually have three folks in different areas that are on the task force. So it's kind of an interesting situation. It's driven by the commissioners, WASAC, and they are having discussions with all the folks to figure out the challenges with different legislative pieces around renewable energy. And they're kind of focused on the property tax shift in some of the different pieces. But the piece that every county on the east has talked about is the sales tax refund situation. And I know that I am the Southeast region chair for the Treasurers Association, which is like Yakima, Klickitat East, not to include Grants in the north, but so in that section. And, a couple of years ago, I would come into the meetings and say, hey, we have this situation, and nobody really cared until now as times have gone on, more and more counties in our region. And I know from the Treasurers Association, we're saying, okay, hey, how is this working? And different counties are struggling or, kind of working through that. And specifically, I've had a lot of conversations with Columbia County, Carla, who's the treasurer over there. And one of the things that I have said is that, like in this WASAC group, it's all the counties. But what gets lost is some of the east side counties are the ones that are dealing with the actual facilities themselves, or getting the revenue and having to pay back the refunds, or doing the different things in the situations. So one of the things that I had brought up to Jake, because we've tried to bring it into the task force, but they are trying to keep their scope very narrow, and they don't really, Paul Jewell has brought it up multiple times, he doesn't want to rabbit trail off and include that sales tax as part of it. They're really working on the property tax with Representative Rommel and some other folks in different parties. And so I have talked about, and I wanted to bring it to the board and just kind of make sure we're on the same page, is sending out an email to get my group of treasurers with the assessors group of those same counties and a representative of the boards of those counties to try to get, because we get lost in the bigger state of Washington, and there are other counties that are in our situation, and trying to, at least kind of say, okay, hey, we are 10 people over here that are doing that. It may or may not work. I have no idea. It's just a suggestion, and it's something, but we tried to talk about it in this energy task force. And I don't think that anybody disagrees it doesn't need to be talked about. I think just like we all go to lots of meetings, everybody's trying to keep keep the scope, because pretty soon you have scope creep and then you're
Mhm.
off base of what you're trying to deal with. So I know in our association, we have those conversations, I just don't know that anybody knows where to be the spark plug in there. And so it came up to possibly try to set up a meeting. The problem is, like in our county, to have all commissioners, because then you have to have a public meeting. And then if we had to do that across 9 counties, it would be really challenging. But trying to get groups of those folks to say, okay, is there a way we could, suggest to the state that they keep their portion, or let us keep our portion of the sales tax and you give your portion back for the refund, or however, because it is a big deal to the smaller counties. Columbia County, one of them, that's really talked about how difficult it is to try to figure out what do you recognize, what do you not recognize for sales tax, how do you deal with that, because when those guys want the refund. So basically, I think what we're talking about is just to make sure we're all on the same page, is me just sending an email to those other counties, but not, so you don't get emails from your seatmates saying, what the heck is going on? And I know Jake had an email from Carla in Columbia County, and he copied, because we're all trying to stay on the same page. We're all dealing with some of these same situations. So I think that's really what our question is it worthy of having a discussion of East Side counties, to talk about that. So other of our peers.
So for clarification for me, Wasak's working on the tax shift issue. And you're talking about outside of that, working on the sales tax rebate portion as our little group of counties over here, so that we might be able to give that to our lobbyists to work on.
Right. To a lobbyist, and either create an if we decide, okay, to try to ask other counties. Is there an appetite for them to even have that discussion to where we can be heard? Or do we make enough of a group to where we can maybe get Wasac to understand that there's another piece to this? I don't know. Again, I go back to the whole thing. I was asked by the president of the Treasurers Association to sit on this task force. And when I got all the emails, then I realized that Billy's on it. I'm on it. Because we have a lot of energy here, which makes sense. But we're one of the very few counties that has all 3 of our elected officials on the board. But when we've all said that, the task force is CEP, something energy.
SEPTI.
Yeah, something about renewable energy. And basically, as we say, I think in our minds, we believe that the tax shift and the sales tax are kind of all part of the renewable energy thing. But the WASAC doesn't want to deal with the sales tax piece and the rebate piece at all. They want to stay focused on the renewable, or on the property tax shift.
I actually like them being separated, because the tax shift, I feel, based on past history, is going to get lobbied, just like the last tax shift legislation that was in there. So I kind of like them being separate.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing. I'm just meaning they are somewhat interrelated.
They absolutely are, and I'd love to take care of them both together, but then the green energy lobby gets involved and gets bias on the bill, and then the bill's no good anymore. And so I kind of like them separate. And yeah, I think it would behoove us to move forward on the property tax or the sales tax rebate portion of it. Because maybe if we just gather the information and become a cohesive unit with 8 counties, that might be enough to push Wasac next year to work on it as a standalone.
Right. And I think that's what we're kind of saying is, where does that go? But I think all of those counties, like I said, I know in my treasurers meetings that we have, it's a discussion. Almost all, but I can tell you that 4 years ago, nobody was, oh yeah, and as it comes on, but when you get the whole treasurers group, we have counties on the west side that are like, oh, that doesn't pertain to me. So they don't really want to hear it. But in our regional situation, it makes a bigger.
The sales tax rebate portion to me, I would hope you would all look at it more of a state approach than a regional approach, because it isn't also just about green energy projects. It could be data storage. It could be Amazon warehouse buildings.
That's a lot of that's been taken care of. So this is actual legislation that was passed that created this sales tax exemption. And we dealt with it in the data storage part when we went through that 6 years ago, so that it's supposed to only be on the state portion. And so my thought is what we need to do is get all of our group together that it impacts and have both the treasurers, the assessors, and the county commissioners all working together. Each one of these counties also has a lobbyist. And so we can sic each one of those lobbyists and say, this is a priority for you in this legislative session. And we find two or a Republican and a Democrat to run it. And so it would be us using all of our lobbyists because, we usually don't have our lobbyists run bills for us. And this is where we could actually get a lot of value out of our lobbyists. And if each of the counties, some of them have different lobbyists, we could have 4 or 5 different lobbyists working it. And if you can find a Democrat and a Republican to all run it, and it's a really simple change in the legislation. It's only adding a sentence or subtract. And so
So you're looking at ideally mirroring it after the data storage.
potentially, yes, that'd be the easiest.
Yeah,
to
no,
do.
I think it would behoove us because I don't think we get a very big bang for our buck out of our lobbyists. And I don't know that a lot of counties necessarily have strict priorities for their lobbyists. So I think this could work out good. And I don't like muddying it in with the tax shift because while I want to continue working on the tax shift, this one I don't think the green energy lobby is going to get actively involved in because they don't care.
Oh, they care a lot. This
Whether
is-
the state gives back a portion of the tax or not, they're still paying the same.
No, that's they pay it and it comes to us and we can sit on it for a year to 3 years and then they ask for the money back. And so in this
And I
instance,
think the question is, and that's a lot of the treasurers are saying this, and from the people that are managing the dollars, is if the state wants to do that, keep it the way it is, make it an exemption, and they don't pay this tax and the state sits on it and they deal with it. I mean, this is a different one and there's a lot of different pieces. And I think that's why we need to have this discussion with this greater group, because who knows how all the parts and pieces will come in. But I think the challenge is that for some of these smaller counties, and I want to say it was Columbia, but I can't remember, they didn't have any money and they got all of a sudden, hey, well, you got to reimburse the state DOR for the money. And it was, a huge amount of money that they had recognized as revenue to sales tax, and then they had to pay it back. And that was a challenge. And I think when you get to this side of the state in some of these counties that we're looking at, that the budgets aren't that massive when you look at some of the wind farm pieces that are coming. And I shouldn't say wind farm, renewable energy. So it's more of a matter of, how to go about it. It's either to leave us keep our percentage and not rebate that to do. But I think that's the question, is to start the dialogue with other folks other than just ourselves that are in similar situations and see where that group goes. Again, it's just like any other group project. You don't know where the thing's going to head. But I think that all those counties are in the same situation, because when you try to have that conversation in a bigger group, and again, I go back to my association that we work through, is a lot of our other, they're like, not my thing. They don't really see it like the smaller counties that are dealing with the wind farms or the renewable energy in their area.
Yeah, I see it as a win-win. There's really no loss to it. If we can get some momentum to pressure a WASAC or a lobbyist to do something, great. If nothing comes of it, we're no worse off than we are today.
I feel that way too. I just want to make sure you don't hear from your seatmates in Columbia County saying, "Hey, why is your treasurer emailing me?" Or how. And I think that we can
exactly
do
what I expect to happen. So all commissioners are on the same wavelength, because I had a few years where I didn't even know we were out lobbying for something. So I think each commissioner needs to be.
And I think the thing with the SEPTI is it's a task force. It is a big piece. There's a lot of parts to it, and there's a lot of elements to the tax shift part of it. So I do see where they want them to be separate, but they are impacting these more rural counties
And
that are.
on this one, I could be wrong. Don't want to speak for anybody, but I can also imagine that the three of us are probably in pretty good lockstep on this. So there's not a whole lot of
And I'm thankful you want to take it up.
Each one of us is working on it.
We had a
Always
really
got
good
time.
conversation on a out of the other with some other treasurers and assessors, and it was just a good, and it's like, gosh, if we could try to build on this a little bit, because I think there's some of us that are in the weeds on these things and we see
It
them,
needs to be changed.
and we need to try to figure out what some better solution is for
Well,
that.
that's the thing. If you can figure out the better solution and figure out a way to sell it, then you can educate others and your coalition grows. So, yeah, no, I'm good.
So
Did you have more, Jake?
how it works now is they pay their sales tax to DOR when they build the project, right?
Correct.
So they front load it and
But DOR gives us the money.
DOR gives us our portion of
Correct.
the money. And so, and we sit on that between how long have we sat on?
I
some of
have
that
to go
money?
read the rules, and until they ask for it back, they can go in and there's different variants.
It's
Whether you
years,
can
right?
get 50, yep.
Well,
it's
we don't
several
know what
years.
the dollar amount is. We have to
Nope.
guess, right?
We don't, yeah. And so we try to figure out what that's going to be, and then they come back and DR says, oh, you got to pay back X number of dollars.
And we don't want DOR to hold on to that money because when we're sitting on it, we're making interest on it because it's invested.
Yeah, I mean, unless we go back to interest rates that are at 20 basis points, then I mean, then you're, and that's where
We've got all
been at.
sorts of problems if we do that right now.
I understand that, but I'm just saying we've been through multiple in my 10 years of being
Yeah.
here. We've been from 20 basis points to 5.5. So
I say, I kind of don't like the idea of the state holding it for the interest reason, but in the same regard, if when they pay you the money, if they can tell you what that's coming from, at least counties that are ill prepared
and that's
can set it
and that's
aside, and
exactly
then
it.
you can all get interest off.
And there's another solution where maybe we get a better way for them to when they hand the money down to be able to flag it, or who knows.
If they're not
There's just
gonna
a
let
lot
us
of parts
keep
and
it,
pieces.
then yeah, I'd hate for them to hold it because.
But
we can-
opening those dialogues as a group, I think, is going to help all of Eastern Washington counties with some of these energy projects.
I think all of these,
It should be a easy legislative action. It'll be a heavy lift, but in terms of the actual work to be done, it's pretty simple.
So anyway, I'm going to send out the email. I think we're all on the same page with that. So if there's any questions, you guys, where I'm at.
Thank you.
Great.
Awesome.
That was easy for me.
Thank you guys for
Didn't
coming
hear
over
it.
and taking the time.
Thank
Make
you.
you sit back down and give us
I got
something.
like 3 words in there.
Bye.
And you missed one in consent, and then you missed one of the utility permits unless you're not for the utility permit.
That's about over.
It was on the last.
Throw
one on
that
consent.
last one you just gave me over here, that single, and I'll sign that and then kind of.
Then we can put it back in.
That makes me wonder whether, yeah.
Well, I thought you might not wanted to sign it, but then you signed the one behind it, and I'm like, oh, okay, you just probably missed it.
That's something in consent, he says.
Madam Chair, I have one other thing for the business agenda.
Okay.
This comes out of the earlier executive session meeting. On October 7th, 2024, Klickitat County received a tort notice of claim alleging Commissioner Dan Christopher engaged in tortious conduct while acting in his official capacity. Pursuant to RCW 4.96.041, Klickitat County shall provide defense coverage to the county officers of the legislative authority if the legislative authority determines that the claim arises from acts or omissions while performing or in good faith purporting to perform his or her official. Madam Chair, I would make a motion based on the allegations presented to the legislative authority and after consulting with legal counsel. At this time, I would move that Dan Christopher was not acting within his official duties related to the alleged actions outlined in the tort notice of claim, nor was he acting in good faith. Therefore, the county should deny coverage at taxpayer expense.
So because of conflict of interest, I'll step down and second. Discussion.
I
would warn my seatmates that it is the insurance company that will ultimately handle this and decide whether there was a proper investigation. Because I would notify you now so that you can't say you didn't know. The prosecutor never asked me any questions, never asked for any documents. So if you make an action based on insufficient research, you might be opening the county up to more litigation. So all I'm saying is tread carefully.
Madam Chair, I would just notice that the motion, as it states, it says at this time. And that was in there for a purpose.
And we did have executive session prior to this for consultation. So any further discussion?
I have none.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
I am very disappointed in this board playing politics. So I would just go on record with that. And I apologize to the taxpayers in advance for what's coming.
Anything else?
I have nothing else for the agenda.
Nothing else?
Are either of my seatmates going to be at the commerce meeting tomorrow afternoon?
I am.
Dan, will you make it?
I don't know.
Okay, I will make that motion as it is. Madam Chair, I would make a motion to recess the regular meeting, noting that all three commissioners will be participating in an interview with KLCK Radio October 17th, 2024 at 8:05 a.m. On Wednesday at 4:30, there's a commerce meeting that one or more commissioners may attend in White Salmon. There's further a budget workshop on Thursday, October 17th at 8:30 a.m.
So I'll step down in second. Is what just Dan didn't want.
Is there anything else for the good of the order that needs to be discussed? I guess not.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Motion passes. Thank you.